How do I find practical lessons in Chassidus? Learn Chassidus, and Chassidus will give you practical lessons. I have two things to say. Number one, and this is a compulsive truth, it's an absolute truth. I think it's an undeniable truth. And that is, you want practical lessons in Chassidus, learn Tanya. Whenever people ask me, I have an opportunity to learn with this one Chassidus, that one Chassidus, before he finishes the sentence, I say, learn Tanya. Yeah, but he learned it already. Tanya, 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 Tanya. You cannot possibly emphasize the practical usefulness of Tanya, and you can not possibly overlearn the Sefer Tanya Kedisha. There's always more for the Tanya to teach us, and most significantly, specifically when it comes to the Sefer Tanya, there's so much that the Tanya can give us, which is Poshet Negeh L'Maaseh. It's very, very practical. Tanya is incredibly practical. And in quoting, that should be a koch. Now, if you know how the Tanya was written, you understand that the Tanya was written for many different Chassidim. And as it says in the introduction from the Gaon HaMachaber, that it's kol ha'etzes, the kol ha'shailis, that it's all the answers. It's very interesting. Now, the Rebbe says that every single question that's asked in Yonah Avodas Hashem is addressed in the Sefer Tanya Kadisha, and that an answer is provided. Kol ha'tshuvas, la kol ha'shailis. And the issue is to find which part of the Tanya speaks to you. And of course, in Akdama, the Sefer Tanya Kadisha, the Alter Rebbe introduces us to the need for mashpiyim, for asay l'chorav, what he calls zekenim shebe'irid, elders. A person has to figure out Mekayme Madregosa, his place in Torah, his place in the Tanya. Everybody has a different koch in Tanya. For some people it's Perek Yud Beis, for some people it's Perek Tezvav, for some people it's Perek Yud Ches, for some people it's Perek Chavov, for some people it's Perek Chav Zayin or Chav Ches, and so on. And Lamed Beis. And you learn the Tanya, you find the Perek that talks to you, you talk it over with your Rav, with your Mashpia, Asay Lecha Rav, and you make that your priority, your koch, your inyan. Or to give this example, the Geras HaKedesh, Simen Chav Hey, about Kas, is a piece in Tanya which speaks to people, and so on and so forth. And it's of course very, very important. But Klal Yiddishkeit, life is serious. Yiddishkeit is serious. Chassidus is serious. Avodas Hashem is serious. And we're serious, and we have to take ourselves seriously. The beginning of the practical lessons of anything in Chassidus is taking our spiritual life seriously. In America there's one thing that everybody takes seriously, and that's money, and the means to acquire that money. If I can find an artificial means of acquiring money, I'm not going to work, and I'm not going to do anything. That's the tragedy of our culture. But to a Yid, to a human being, and to a Yid, life is not money. It's what you do constructively with the money, which is live. And a Yid's life is Torah mitzvahs. And of course, if you have a connection to Chassidus, it's your life. Torah mitzvahs, fisha mo'arim, aydemor, shabbatera, zahi Torah Chassidus. As Yiddishkeit, as Torah mitzvahs are illuminated by the light of the source of Torah, which is Chassidus. So therefore, Chassidus is part of the process of being earnest, of being serious and sincere and hard-working about Torah, mitzvahs, and Yiras Shamayim and Chassidus. And we sometimes need help, but if we need the help, we should find the help, and then Eretz Hashem will figure out which is our piece in the Tanya, and we'll apply it. From the Alter Rebbe, there are very famous expressions in the Alter Rebbe about the Tanya. And one of the expressions is that the Chassidim wanted that the Alter Rebbe should say Chassidus and Chaim, Kabbalah Zachen, different kinds of things. And the Alter Rebbe said, amongst other things, Was Gazetten darft ihr alle Tag frische Neues lernen Tanya. Von Tanya, ich sage euch zu, als von Tanya kann man werden nach Chassid als wie Avraham Avinu. The Alter Rebbe said to them, you need Gazetten, that means everyday fresh news, like a daily newspaper. Learn Tanya. I promise you, from Tanya you can become a chassid like Avraham Avinu was. With learning Tanya, you can never ever overlearn the Tanya. The Alter Rebbe himself was studying Tanya. So somebody once asked the Alter Rebbe why he's learning the Tanya. So he answered, I see more news in the Tanya than I saw by my Rebbe Mezrich. This is the first suggestion. And the second suggestion is one of the things that too many of us forget, unfortunately, is the principle of der v'der umanhigov. The Rebbe speaks to us, whether it's in the Siches or it's in the Igris Kodesh. And people like to learn Chassidus, and they should learn Chassidus. And la'olam yilmud adam b'makam sheli b'chafet. You like to learn Rebbe Rashab, learn Rebbe Rashab. You like to learn Mittel Rebbe, learn Mittel Rebbe. You like to learn from Tzemach Tzedek. But that's been a get to limud. But to get the practical lessons in life, you need to hear Heiros and Avodah B'chayim from our Rebbe, because he's your Rebbe. Meaning to say, even though he's such a great tzaddik, and his Avodah is in a completely different universe than the Avodah we're doing, but he's the Nasi, he's the head of our generation, and he's connected to the body of the generation, which is us. And he knows in Yonei Avodah that are very important for us, and we should acclimate ourselves, we should accustom ourselves to finding out what does the Rebbe say about various nanim of Avodas Hashem. And of course, there are a few classic ideas which can be said that are almost generic, they almost apply to every person. Number one, like hamedrish iker ela hamaisa, the most important thing is action, to do something. Number two, if this havaya besimcha, that Yiddishkeit, no matter what, must be done besimcha. Every Yid, every Chassid has to serve Hashem besimcha. And this is a Yesod Moised and Avodas Hashem in the Torah of Chassidus Bechlal and the Rebbe especially. And number three, that our connection to the Eivish Al Tikra Vayikra Ala Vayakri, our ability to have a relationship with the Eivish is predicated on being Makad of somebody else. And it's very, very important to learn the Sichos and the lessons in the Sichos and the Igres Kodesh. And sometimes you find contradictions, and then you go and you speak to Yasei L'Charav. But those are my thoughts on this question, at least some of my thoughts on this question. How do I find practical lessons in Chassidus?